Hello, everyone. Welcome back to D1 Crashout. Today, we are talking about leadership and a little side notes on failure and accountability. So, I personally have led a club in high school. I was a track captain, and I currently lead two clubs at San Jose and also represent a few AI brands for different companies. But the bottom line is, I'm no longer just a student. I am also a public figure, which means I represent various things. I also teach a lot, as I've discussed in a few of my check ins and previously in videos, and those are positions of not only leadership but also authority, where you are telling people what to do and what to believe, which means it's very important that you are accurate and that you are right, and that you are right the first time. These kinds of jobs and positions are not only not very rewarding for people who stutter, but people who are not very integral, and that means that they need to embody the actions and the portrayals in which they put out. It is difficult to do and keep track of everything that you say, and to be honest, you are not going to. But in a position of power, in leadership, in anything, there are power dynamics at play, and that more often than not is your clientele. For me, that's been students, like peers, and also people who are looking at your brand. It is getting very real in college where you will have actual companies reaching out to you. Either they want to help host a hackathon, they're coming with brand deals, they want to have access to students, they want to leverage your network, all those amazing things which are great for you and also the companies, but also come with pressure. If you are looking at a brand, you need to make sure that the brand is legit, that you're not advertising something that you don't believe in. YouTubers deal with this all the time, and so do people who do co-brand sponsorships. If that brand does poorly, so does the individual. And if that brand does a really bad thing, like you're Blizzard, and you have a bunch of alleged sexual abuse and mistreatment of people within your company, that is going to reflect on you as an individual who worked for that company, even if you had nothing to do with it. And that is a part of these power dynamics where if you as a leader recommend a brand or push people to something and you don't follow through, for example, there was a one of the ethnic, I believe, clubs at my college. They wanted to get people into this conference and they just didn't have reliable transportation, and a lot of their club members were left confused when they said, get to this conference, we'll provide support for you, and there was no support. And that reflects badly on the entire leadership team, especially if an event goes very poorly. Things could spiral out of control, and some of it may not be your fault. The venue might cancel on you last minute. Your one individual on your leadership team might have just not done their job, but it reflects on you, the planner, or whoever puts the face, most likely your club and your company, everything. That is why HR is so huge. That's why PR is very huge, because the internet is permanent, and so are people's impressions of you. People do, in my video of you don't owe anyone anything, you will remember, if you watched it, that people aren't obligated to give forgiveness, or to that apologies, even if they feel obligated, aren't an obligation for people to forgive the company, right? Second chances aren't mandatory. And that means that it is so valuable that you, as a leader, do things right the first time. You are not guaranteed a second chance. And second chances also, similarly, are not guaranteed in life. Right? The hard part of living is that mistakes are costly and permanent. And this has not gotten graver ever since the internet has existed and cancel culture blew up. And there's a lot of pressure on people to actually have to live up to their mistakes and genuinely have to be better people, and people who do things right, in which when you are told to not fear failure and to be okay with things not going perfectly, to not be a perfectionist, to just try things, is very scary, and rightfully so. But that doesn't mean that you stop doing things altogether, right? That extremism video that I made, that doesn't mean you give up entirely and that life is just terrible and you should live in fear, but you should have a little bit. And once you take that leadership role, you have to realize that you are now the one being judged, that judgment is there to keep you in line, to make sure that you do the right things, and you will always be judged post hoc. What do I mean by that? Let's say, this is covered by TGB Gray, but let's say you are a president and there is a pandemic going about. You are unsure if you want to accept the damage to your economy, but you also want to make sure that people are not dying. If you go too crazy on the pandemic response, your economy takes a big hit and people are going to judge you hard for shutting down the economy just because some flu was going around. And if the pandemic is real and you don't do a great response, then people are going to judge you for doing a half-baked pandemic response and that you killed thousands and they won't even mention the economy. They will just say you killed thousands by not caring about your citizens and their worries and the people. So there really is no winning in that situation. And unfortunately, you're going to have to make a decision whether you like it or not. And if you do nothing, it is still going to be a decision. And that is a great analogy for what leadership really is. You are trying to, based off of the past, make a decision that impacts the future, and you do not know how it is going to impact the future, but you are hoping that the past is indicative of the future and that it is in your best interest. No one is going to level with you and be like, oh, yeah, that made sense at the time. We're not mad at you. Like, no, you are responsible. I'm now going to hold you accountable immediately for this action. Even if it was completely outside of your control, you made a bad call and now you reap the consequences. And you're either on cleanup or you get fired. And that's the difficult truth of it, frankly. And if you're wondering now, what is the upside to it? Well, if you do good, you do good. And you gain value as an individual. You get to report that on your resume and you get to individually reap the rewards of your actions. And if you do bad, you do bad. And where this comes into failure and accountability is, well, you are forced, whether you like it or not, once you take leadership, to be an accountable person. How do you prepare for that? You take accountability, you have integrity in your life, even when nobody's watching, because everyone is going to be watching if you're in a position of power, if you're a leader, right? Because, well, assuming you're a leader means that there are people under you. And that's where there's value to be an integral person just in general. And I know that saying that sounds kind of crazy, but there's a lot of people out there who they don't really care about their actions unless somebody is judging them for it. That's kind of why judgment exists, because, people like to do the bare minimum. Like, if I could live a great life and just not work at all, and there's a ton of people suffering for it, like, I couldn't really tell you if I would care that there were a ton of people suffering for it or not. I could just tell you right now that I want a better life, and I'd be willing to do what it takes to get there. And I don't know how I'd feel yet, because I'm not there. People, there's a good analogy on this from The Good Place where they talk about how people are just giving points based off of what they do in life, and their attention matters. Like, let's say I accidentally saved a lady, but I was just jaywalking, they would say that that's not a good thing. But, and like, let's say I wanted to do something good for myself and my family, and I like bought better food and healthier food, or I bought cheaper food, but the way that cheap food was sourced was not very ethical. It was on the back of, like, let's say plantation or child labor. And, well, that would be also judged as a bad action. You're supporting bad business practices, but I might not have known that those were bad business practices. I just want to do something good for my family, but it doesn't make it a good deed. And I don't think I covered this very well in my video on intention, but yes, this is a very real problem that people actually have to deal with, where they're judged on factors that they might not have known or out of their control. And frankly, that is just how it is. And the hope is that as you grow as an individual and as you choose positions of power, that you are well versed and that you are ready to accept those positions of power and all the responsibilities that come with it. That includes being able to have good foresight and being representative of your own actions. And hopefully you've experienced enough failure and actually learned and grown from your mistakes in order to be someone who doesn't make very many mistakes. For teaching, for me, that meant I don't stutter very much. I lose my train of thought in these videos because I'm very genuine, but my teaching is very rehearsed, and so is my speaking as a part of my leadership, and so are the materials that I give out to my individuals who are searching for a career. I need to make sure that they're reliable, that I've tested them myself, and that I've gotten real results from them myself. And that means a lot of hands-on work that I wouldn't have to do if I was a member. But the joys in it, for me, come from actually providing something useful and helpful to other people. For teaching, it's being the teacher that I wish that I was growing up. And those are noble, nice ideals, but that doesn't mean anything unless I do it right, unless the kids actually learn. And unfortunately, that means that sometimes you have to be mean. There's an interesting perspective on parenting where as a kid, like, you might just want to eat all the candy that you want, and you might want to do the really adventurous things that a bunch of other people are doing that like might be the safest or be the best practice. I know when I was a kid, I just wanted to play sports on my heart out, and then I end up hurting myself a lot, and my parents were like, I told you so, but they let me do it because I had to learn that experience for myself. In which you as a parent, which also is a position of leadership and especially a position of authority, are obligated to, well, take care of your kid and protect your kid, but also let them learn and grow and make their own mistakes in an environment which, isn't going to kill them or devastatingly impact their future, right? That you're hoping that your experience is able to help you make an informed decision to that degree. And that is another great example of this leadership that I speak of, where if you want to prepare to be a leader, you want to grow in an environment which isn't as devastating as a position of leadership, especially as it gains more visibility. Like on one hand, for me, I'm glad that there's a lot of members in these clubs and that I can help a lot of people, hopefully. But that also means that I'm under a lot more judgment and I'm under more scrutiny, and that my actions have more meaning because it impacts more people, or I am responsible for more individuals. And if something bad that is an advice for me reflects on them poorly, it reflects on me poorly. And that's the power of the press, as one might say. So, power dynamics in play. Something to think about. But train in an environment which is low failure. Be an integral person. Be accountable, even when nobody is watching, if you ever plan to be somebody who gets watched. And if you're in that parent level of accountability, give your kids that environment to fail and to grow as individuals. And also help them to be integral before they know the importance of why. The ideology behind the parenting is if you hated your parents growing up but understood them after you had already grown. For me, that is, they used to give me a bedtime, they told me to do chores, they told me to care about my actions, be intentional, be smart. These are things that I all now value as an adult. And there are things that I didn't really understand as a kid, but now I realize are important because people want to work with smart people. People want to work with stand-up individuals, actually get their work done without somebody forcing or telling them to. And also to not beat myself up so much for the failure, because failure happens a lot. You're about to see me make a dumb mistake and die because I wasn't paying attention. And that's part of the reason why I post these videos, with everything included. That being genuine, being vulnerable, helps you to grow the most, even if it hurts. Okay, that's my 2 cents. Of course, I have lots more to say on the topic, but that is my crash out about leadership. Okay, have a great one. See y'all later.